Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Divine exclusive video. So, chosen ones, listen up, pay attention. This video, I'm going to break down pretty much everything that's deep, everything that you kind of been wondering or figuring out. And see, the purpose of this video is just to kind of let you know which stage you're in. There are three main stages every chosen one goes through in their life. So this video may actually have two parts because there's a lot to get into today. Please like, subscribe, feel free to share, comment. Uh, like I said, this we're gonna kind of get into the depth of this because there's a lot of unawareness. There's a lot of, and it took me a while to figure out. There's a lot of unknowns and variables before there's so much that happens. There's so many different puzzles. There's so many different pieces and parts and areas that you have to navigate in your life, chosen ones. There's so many different clues and hints as to what you're doing, what season you're in, and what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm gonna talk about the three stages that every chosen one has to go through, and it it's pretty obvious, but you have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing, where you're at, and the signs. So I'm gonna break down the three stages of a chosen one. So there's three different stages that every chosen one goes through in their life, uh, and the first one is unawareness. So this is kind of the ugly truth because once you figure, it takes you a while to really figure out who you are, and this is the first stage every chosen one goes through. This is the longest stage. Now there's clues here and there, but this is kind of like the movie the Truman Show, when it's like until the end he was pretty much in this stage. I think if you watch the movie, he's like 30 because there's a part in the movie where he turns 30. So he's in this stage for 30 years. Now for everyone this is different. Some chosen ones are in this stage for 20 years. Some figure it out hell before, while they're in grade school still. Some are in it for 20, 30, 40. But this is the majority of your life, or a good chunk of your life stage. Probably a third to more, just depending on when you kind of figure out. So the unawareness stage is from birth to adulthood, or some people, you know, geniuses figure it out while they're in grade school. So this is the stage where you have no idea that you're a chosen one, where you uh, you kind of, you know, and especially it's of course when you're a kid, you're not paying attention to all this stuff. Your brain's not fully developed until you reach the age of 22. So your whole life you're trying to fit in. You may have had friends because and of course it's easier when you're a kid. You may have been able to connect when you're younger because no one pays attention to this stuff. You really don't. The judgment part of people really doesn't come until they're in high school, until they're in college, until they're further on. So when you're a kid, you don't really pay attention to it because it probably was easier to fit in when you're really little. But as you get older, as you get to middle school, as you get to high school and college, you start to see the difference because as people get older, they get more judgmental, and people start to pay attention to you, and there's a need to fit in that it's hard to do. So in this unawareness stage, you don't know who you are. You know that but you do start paying attention at some point that you're different, that people react to you different, that the way you see things are different, that you dim your light to fit in. Uh, you're really unaware of a lot of different things, but you start to see how things are different for you, how the way things operate in your life versus how the way things operate in other people's lives, the way you see things, how you talk, how you express yourself. You have so much death, like emotional death, spiritual death, Death, not death. Depth. So you dim your light to fit in, but see, the thing is, when you dim your light to fit in, you don't understand that you have a light. You just understand that there's a difference, but you don't understand the light that you have. You don't understand that, like, damn, there's something different about me versus everyone else. But you don't know what that is. So when you're in this unawareness stage, you're like, what the hell is going on? Why can't I, why is it so hard for me to fit in? Or why do I have to, because you feel like there's maintenance. You feel like there's extra effort that you have to put in to fit into certain groups. During this unawareness stage, you have the wrong people in your life. You have people that try to not just sabotage you, but they look at you as naive. They look at you as you're so trustworthy. Even if you're an adult and you're still in this stage, people know your value more than you. So that's why I said it's unaware, is because people understand. They don't understand everything about you, but they understand you have a light and you have value to you. They see it on. See, it's kind of like, that's why point of view is so important, because sometimes other people can see things in you that you can't see in yourself. That's why I said you don't know and that's the thing, you don't know what you look like to other people. You don't know how you look. You don't know what they're thinking in their head when you run across them. So you're just looking at everything on the surface level in this stage. You're looking at everything like, damn, I'm not good enough, or damn, what's wrong with me? That's a lot of what you're feeling. You're feeling like you have to prove yourself because you don't know yourself. You know that, hey, you know that you have some influence. You know that, you have some swag, or you're vibrant, but you don't know anything about, you know, that you being on a higher frequency than other people, your light, you being a chosen one, you being an empath, you being something different. You have no idea about that. So you tend to attract the wrong people in your life. You tend to not have boundaries. You tend to uh, just have you don't have as much respect for yourself because you don't understand the full realm of what you are. So you don't know your worth fully, and you're just thinking you're kind of, I'm not going to say you're low vibrational, but you kind of have the mindset of a low vibrational person because you don't understand what you are. So you lower yourself because you don't know the value that you have. So you have a lot of, you're meant to elevate, but you're around people. And see, people aren't going to tell you that. And that's the messed up thing, is like, people aren't going to tell you that there's something different about you, that there's something special about you, that you have value. People aren't going to tell you that you could be doing more. And it's kind of like in the Truman Show. They were just kind of going along with it, Jim Carrey in the movie, he was playing this character Truman, and he's like, no one's letting him know anything. He just thinking he's just this average person, just living his regular life, has no idea that he's being filmed, has no idea that, just like Tupac said, all eyes on me. He has no idea that it's all eyes on him. He has no idea of what he's about and the reality that he's living in. So that's why I said this is the unawareness stage. And, you just tend to have the wrong people in your life because you don't have the value for yourself. See, in order to set standards, in order to have boundaries, you have to know your value. And that's why it's hard to really do that. It's hard to set boundaries and have standards in this stage because you don't know that. So that's the first one. It's a long, frustrating stage. And I'm going to talk about the transition a little bit later from 1 to 2. But when you get to the next stage, you really look back on this stage and you really hate yourself a little bit for it. Just not that you want to, but it's like, damn, I shouldn't have been in this stage this long. So the first stage is unawareness, and this could take up so much. This is where it's frustrating, because it's like, when you look back on this stage, you're gonna be like, damn, I wasted a lot of time, and I was around a lot of wrong people. I was around a lot of negative people. So the first stage is unawareness, and kind of you have an identity, but you lack the ability to unlock it, so to speak. The second stage, and this is where things start to change, is your spiritual awakening. So this is also known as the transition phase. So in this phase, once you understand who you are, you know, kind of like in the Matrix when Neo started to understand that he's the one or what he was dealing with. See, when you were low, before I kind of go into the stage, when you're in stage one, you had no idea of the spiritual warfare. That's another thing too. And since you were not you weren't a low vibrational person, but you acted low vibrational, so you probably didn't get attacked as much in this first stage because or you probably did, but you probably just kind of brushed it off, but you didn't understand the spiritual warfare. In this stage two, spiritual awakening slash transition phase, your isolation. You typically are in isolation because you wake up to realize, damn, a lot of these people around me don't have my best interests. They're not really who they say they are. You know, you have people who drain your energy. You have people who've used you, who betrayed you. You have narcissists. You have these energy vampires. You have all these wicked people that you have to just get rid of. Because once you have a spiritual awakening, you're able to discern and see people for who they are, not who they pretend to be. So you isolate yourself because you start to have standards and self-respect for yourself. Your old habits die. All the bad habits that made you vibrate low, you get rid of. Whether it's, I'm not going to say you turn into like a nun or, you just go completely sober and you don't. I'm not saying it's like that, but just all the old habits that made you connected to the people that were taking advantage of you, you just lose interest for those. Whether it's drinking, whether it's smoking, whether it's, partying, whether it's going to do certain things, whether it's riding around, being in the streets or being around the wrong influences and just doing whatever, you no longer have a wanting to do those things. Like it's numb to you. You don't get excited about it anymore. In this, when you go through your character development, you go through your growth, you go through your discernment, your confidence like heightens to a whole new level. So you're looking at things in the spirit realm and you're finding out like, I am a child of God. I am a divine being. You can discern better who's full of shit and who's not. You you go through and your warfare increases because now the devil is looking at it like, damn, he knows who he is. I need to discourage him. I need to get him back to. So what the devil is trying to do in this phase, he's trying to get you. It's kind of funny when you look at it. The devil's trying to get you to go from this phase back to the first phase, but it's like you already kind of seen it. It's kind of like a, a magician. Once you've seen the magician and how they do their tricks, it's kind of hard to pretend like you don't know what they're about to do. So the devil in this phase, he's trying to get you to go from this spiritual awakening, this transition phase, back to your unawareness. Because when you're unaware, he could keep you stayed there. See, the purpose of the chosen one is to get to the third stage. That's the whole, because you're never going to fulfill God's promise and what God has promised you in stage one. And the devil wants you to stay there. And if you get out of stage one to stage two, the devil is going to want you to get you back to stage one. But I'll get more back into these transitions in probably the second video. But in this stage, in stage two, you realize all the people around you didn't have your best interests at heart. You start to see through the deception. You start to see through the lies, through the manipulation. You start to see that a lot of people were not who they say they are. So you go through a period of isolation because God has to kind of refine your character. You have discernment, so you're like, I respect and validate myself enough not to be around people who don't. People took advantage of me not knowing who I am. Now that I know who I am, I know who not to be around. I know who not to trust. I know, and if, the new people that come in my life, they're going to have to earn it. They're going to have to really be authentic and honest. and not deceitful. So in this stage, like I said, you're everything kind of feels funny because in this phase, you feel like, damn, is this my new reality? It's like a lot of people were so wicked, and then I had to leave them behind. But damn, so you're kind of tempted to go back to the first phase because you're like, this doesn't seem right. You're gonna seem kind of odd. It's gonna seem different because you're living a new life. Technically, you go through intense trials. You go through a fire. You may go through financial hardships. You may go through emotional hardships because your brain is trying to register something new. It's kind of like, you know, someone who's never worked outside before. They worked indoors their whole life, and now all of a sudden they have to work outside, and they're not used to working outside, so it's getting to them. You know, you if you're not used to working in the heat all day, or you're not used to working in the cold all day, if you go from an office setting to that, that's going to be a tough transition, and that's going to be hard first on. So that's what this is like. It's like all your old habits are dying. You've been isolated. You're in character development, but there's still pain in this. So this is where you kind of feel the most pain, because in the first stage, you didn't feel pain because you were used and comfortable, but you were comfortable, but you were unaware. You were blinded to the reality of who you are. In this phase, you go through the initial pain at first because it's like, this is unfamiliar territory. I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. But you have to kind of do this because you respect yourself too much to go back to phase one. So in this phase, like I said, you're trying to find yourself. You become more in tune with God. You get closer to God. You hear God more because you have less distractions. The wrong things that were around you start disappearing, and now you have insight and more revelation from God. Now you understand your purpose more. Now you're driven by purpose. Now you're driven by action and things that lead to a better life, things that make you improve yourself, make you improve your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, your psychological, wiring, and your goals, your purpose, your mission, all that starts to come to you. And you're like, now this is your transition phase, but this is also where you're focused better. You're not paying attention to things that doesn't matter. So you start thinking about your focus. You start thinking about, how do I make myself successful tomorrow? You start thinking about success. You really start thinking about yourself more, and you stop prioritizing other people's needs. See, in the first one, you're a people pleaser. The second phase, the spiritual awakening phase, you're all about bettering yourself. You're about your connection with God, bettering yourself and your, family, if you have kids, if you have a wife. So you're just about that. You're not about anything else. And this is the most like revelation phase that you'll go through, because you find out everything about yourself, everything that was hidden, everything that people didn't want you to know. You now know your true power. And now you understand why things are happening. You understand why you've been under attack. You understand why people wanted you to doubt yourself or wanted you to dim your life. And once you understand that, you can't see people the same way. You cannot. And that's why I said, that's why you can't go back to the first phase, because you feel like you're just living a phony life. If you go back to the first phase, you feel like you're just trying to undo or wipe out everything that you know. It's like a person going to the magic show and trying to, you've seen how they do the trick, but you're trying to ignore it and act like you're excited about seeing the magic show again. It's like you can't. You're just living a lie. You can't go back to that first stage because it's just been too much revelation. So the second stage is spiritual awakening. It's your transition stage. The third stage, and this spiritual awakening, this transition phase isn't meant to be too long. The unawareness, that's the longest, but the spiritual awakening transition phase is not meant to be long. I'm not gonna put a amount of months or years on this phase, but everyone's not meant to spend a long time in this. Maybe a little while, but it shouldn't be no more than a couple years or a year. So the third stage that the chosen ones are go through, and this is where God wants to get you to. See, the second stage is all about you refining your character because God needs to know if you're aligned. And when you're aligned, once you kill all the old habits and kill all the old toxic people that you knew, and once you've shown that you can handle failure and you go through these intense trials, you go through these attacks, once you can handle that, once your discernment is increased, now you're ready to receive. So this third stage is called the breakthrough phase or the breakthrough stage or whatever you want to call it. And this is where you have to be aligned in position. See, in order to receive something, you have to be in position. If you look at all, and even if you go back to the Bible, if you look at all the blessing, if you look at what Jesus did, they all were in position. The lady with the transfusion of blood, she got close to him. She got in position. She got aligned with him. The guys carrying, there were 4 guys carrying this paralyzed man on a mat, and they lowered him through a roof. He got in position. When Jesus first got in the boat, they were in the wrong position. They didn't catch any fish because they were in shallow waters. See, that's why God's taking you deep. They had to go to the deep waters. They had to really be God's getting you in position. So that they had to be in position, and then they caught all that fish. So once you're in the right position, then you can get to this stage. Once you're thinking right spiritually and mentally, then you can get to this stage. This is when I say breakthrough, don't get it confused. It's not like you're about to, and I'm not saying you can't, but don't just think, oh, well, I'm going to have all this money. I'm going to be like, oh, no, it's not about that. The breakthrough stage is not about you being rich or a millionaire and all this. This is about where you have a career upgrade, your purpose takes off, your blessings overflow, and God brings the right people into your life. You're going to have new relationships built on trust, not on deception. So this is where God kind of takes the wheel. This is why I call it breakthrough stage. This is where God takes the wheel and he's like, okay, you're unattached to everything from the devil, all the old habits, all the old behaviors, all the old people, all the old things that kept you bound. You're free. So this is where you're free spiritually, mentally, psychologically. You have nothing holding you back. And there's nothing that can make you go back. When you're in the second phase, the spiritual awakening phase, there's things that kind of trigger you or tempt you. But when you're in this stage, God knows there's nothing that can make you go back to the first stage. So that's why the blessings are overflowing. You have new relationships built on trust because God knows you're not going to abandon these people to go back to the old people. You're not going to be interested in any of those habits that's going to sabotage this, because this is where it's like, okay, when you get to this stage, you're meant to handle this and carry this to the end of time, to your time on earth is up. So this breakthrough stage, your purpose takes off and you're committed to your purpose the rest of your life. You do not stop this purpose. Whatever purpose God has for you, you stay addicted to this purpose. Your career upgrades, so whatever career you're in, whatever goals and all that takes off, your blessings overflow. So that's why I said it's not like, I'm not saying that you don't have a money increase, but it's not about you being rich or anything, but in this stage, let's just say this, money's not going to be an option not an option, but money's not going to be an issue. You're not going to be looking, oh, I got this bill coming up. Nope, that's not going to be an issue. So in this stage, your blessings are going to overflow. Your new relationships are going to be built on trust. God's going to be looking at it like, I can trust you to handle this. Because in the Bible, it doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money. See, there were so many kings in the Bible. There were so many people that God used. A lot of his chosen ones, they had money. Job had a lot of possessions, especially after God took him through his stages, and at the end, he gave him twice as much than what he had before. So God doesn't mind you having anything. He doesn't mind you having money. He doesn't mind you having businesses and being successful and having the careers and being a big fluent, because that's part of what it's not that he wants you to fall in love with it, is that he he's using that as a means to reach people. So he's like, okay, you have these, I'm giving you these things because I want you to bless other people with not just necessarily with money, but you having the influence to do his will. So you having the influence with, because it takes money to reach. You can't just, if you're broke, or if you're not big, if you can't travel, if you can't be in certain avenues, then you can't reach. You can only reach a certain amount of people. So that's what it's for. It's not for you to just have a lot of money just to splurge and try to act like you're chasing clout or you're all about your money and finance. It's not all about that. It's about being able to travel, reach other people, and promote his purpose and his vision that he has for you. So that's what it's for. It's to bless people with it. It's to use these resources, whether it's financial, whether it's influence, marketing, whether it's just you being around other people. It's to use this to reach and influence more people and fulfill his purpose in a more impactful way on a grander scheme of things. So that's what this breakthrough phase is all about. You know who you are. You can never go back to the old life. You're so in tune with God. All your relationships are built on godly merit. They're built on trust. They're built on honesty. You have no more deception, and Satan cannot attack you through people because you're surrounded by people that God sent. See, when you're surrounded by people that God sent, Satan has to attack you through circumstances and through strangers. He cannot attack you by anyone close anymore. So that's the main three stages that chosen ones have to go through. You go through an unawareness phase, you go through a spiritual awakening, and then you go through the breakthrough stage. So, I'm going to make another video in terms of how you get through each of these parts, and I've been instilled with this knowledge. Like I said, me personally, I'm in the second stage, but I just understand the knowledge of these three things. And I'm just going to break it down how, especially going from 1 to 2, that's the biggest part. Because if you stay in stage 1, it's like you're still on the fence. It's like you're going to be really forgettable. Not that you're doing it to be remembered, but if you stay in that stage 1, then you never even get close to the promise of God. And that's just not what he designed for you chosen ones. It's like you don't glow at all, you don't shine at all, and you really stay stuck in this low vibrational place. So I'm going to make another part to this. Like I said, please get this message out. Please like, subscribe, feel free to share and comment. And I'll be back soon with the second video.